Iran looks pretty powerful. It's somehow involved in a lot of conflicts. The Iranian regime is funding militia groups across the region, and even launched a direct attack on Israel, something that used to be off limits. But how much of it is just for show?
It projects an image of power externally, whereas internally is extremely fragile.
Still, Iran's leaders maintain their grip on power. How? We'll look at key strategies the Islamic Republic has mastered. And we'll try to figure out how powerful is it really. Iran is sandwiched between the Middle East and the rest of Asia. To its north, Russia, a strategic ally. And to the south, major global trading routes. Looks like a pretty good setup for an oil-rich country pushing to be a regional power. But
Iran feels extremely insecure, isolated in that part of the world, really doesn't have much in terms of regional alliances.
This is political economist Sarah Bazubandi. She grew up in Iran and has worked on Iranian issues for over 20 years. A quick look at the map can explain that feeling of isolation. Iran is the country with the largest Shia Muslim population in the world. But all of these neighboring countries have a Sunni majority, which is another much larger branch of Islam. Among them is Iran's main rival, Saudi Arabia. Both are vying for dominance in the Muslim world. Iran is even ruled by a cleric, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who has been the Islamic Republic's supreme leader for the last 35 years. The Iranian Revolution created the Islamic Republic in 1979. It was anti-Western at its core, after a history of British and US meddling in the country. That's another story. Today, we often see rallies like these in Tehran, transporting the rhetoric of the Iranian regime. Since the revolution, it has considered the US and Israel its main enemies, and both have targeted Iran. Qasem Soleimani, a top Iranian general, was assassinated in 2020 by the US. He's become a martyr for the Iranian regime. And Israel is believed to be behind this attack. 7 military officials were killed in an airstrike on an Iranian consulate in Syria. Iran is using these disruptive tactics, proxy militias, drones, and its nuclear program. A lot to unpack there. But let's start with Iran's support of proxy militias. In recent months, Houthi rebels have attacked and sunk commercial ships in the Red Sea, killing several crew members. The Houthis are a militia group based in Yemen, and they're backed by Iran. They reportedly use Iranian intelligence and its drones and missiles. Like Iran, the Houthis consider Israel an enemy. They say the attacks are a response to Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza.
With the help of Iranian drones, a group like Houthis with very little resources managed to become a key instabilizing factor that really brought the global maritime security to the brink of a crisis.
Before the attacks, around a third of the world's container traffic passed through the Red Sea. Since the attacks started, insurance costs have skyrocketed. Many ships are now avoiding the Red Sea altogether and taking this much longer route to get to Europe. An expensive detour that could even drive up the cost of groceries in your local supermarket. Other militias include the powerful Hezbollah in Lebanon. Clashes between Israel and Hezbollah have escalated at the border. And there are other militant groups in Iraq, Syria, and Bahrain. And Hamas in the Palestinian territories which many analysts don't consider a proxy per se, but which gets funding, weapons, and training from Iran. Hamas is considered a terrorist organization by the US and the EU. The militant group launched an attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, after which Israel retaliated with a full-scale invasion and bombardment of Gaza. Iran denied being involved in the planning of the October 7th attack, but this is what its supreme leaders said about it.
We kiss the foreheads and upper arms of the intelligent and brave Palestinians who planned these attacks against the Zionist regime.
Iran describes these groups as the axis of resistance against Israel, the US, and the West as a whole.
But ultimately, maintaining all of these operations requires a lot of leadership and it requires a lot of resources.
So managing the proxies doesn't come cheap. But for now, it's worth it for the Iranian regime. Iran can attack Israel and destabilize the region while keeping conflict away from its own borders. Drones are another part of Iran's playbook. Due to international sanctions, Iran lacks access to advanced technology available elsewhere. So it started designing and producing drones, which are relatively low cost and low tech. But they are effective, barely detectable by radar, and can carry warheads. Iran says it is exporting drones and drone technology to more than 20 countries, including Tajikistan, Armenia, Sudan, Ethiopia, Venezuela, and Algeria. And Russia is using Iranian drones in its war against Ukraine.
It has put Iran on the international map. Use of Iranian drones in Europe in the war in Ukraine was quite sobering for many policymakers, especially in Europe. It has made Iran relevant to a region beyond its traditional realm of influence.
And then there is Iran's large and diverse missile arsenal. Iran and its proxies launched hundreds of missiles and drones towards Israel in 2024, Iran's first direct attack on Israel ever. Iran said it was retaliation for the deadly airstrike on an Iranian consulate in Syria that we mentioned earlier. Israel and its partners intercepted almost all of the barrage, in part because Iran clearly signaled its plans ahead of time. So the attack did little actual damage on the ground.
The principal matter is that Iran and its armed forces have displayed their power and determination in an important international arena. This display of force has happened, and that is what matters.
Iran is maintaining a delicate balance, attempting to show strength while trying to avoid outright conflict. This is Kamran Martin. He's an international relations lecturer and has researched Iran extensively.
These strategies, rather than being intrinsically offensive, they are supposedly defensive because Iran thinks that the West is trying to overthrow the regime at any opportune moment. So these are seen as deterrents.
And deterrence is at the core of Iran's strategy, which leads us to Iran's nuclear program. These are Iran's key nuclear facilities. The Iranian regime has repeatedly said they're used for research and to produce energy. But do they?
Iranian nuclear project produces more or less zero electricity and energy at the moment.
So is Iran building nuclear weapons? The truth is, we don't know. But even the idea that Iran might become a nuclear power is valuable for the regime.
It projects stability for Iranian's military and security agenda, and it makes it very difficult to confront Iran.
The nuclear project becomes a bargaining chip, if you like, in Iran's negotiations with the West, trying to remove the sanctions or improve its standing in international arena.
And for a while, that's what happened. The nuclear deal between Iran and major world powers offered sanctions relief. In return, Iran had to limit its nuclear enrichment. But then Donald Trump, as US president, withdrew from the agreement, a turning point.
Iran began a new strategy which Iranian political elite call turn to the east. And this turn to the east means, or has meant, a much more strategic relationship with China and Russia.
China is the top buyer of Iranian oil. And Iran and Russia have a deepening strategic partnership. But it goes further. This is Iran, Russia, and China conducting joint naval drills.
Iran has been very clear that has a vision for a new world order. In that new world order, the US's power is declining, therefore the non-Western powers are on the rise.
Iran has recently joined BRICS, an economic bloc that aims to be an alternative to major Western powers. But Iran can't fully rely on these countries.
China and Russia have cleverly kept Iran at the doorstep, kept Iran at an arm's length, bring Iran when it serves their interest.
So the Iranian regime pretty much only trusts itself. It relies on the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps that exists in parallel to the conventional Iranian military and is better resourced. The IRGC is key to all the strategies we've looked at, outside the country, but also inside. And that's where Iran's repressive leadership starts to look weak.
Every authoritarian regime relies on a certain level of popular support. And that level of popular support in Iran has been significantly declining over the past decades. And I think that is one of the most dangerous issues that are going against the stability of the regime.
In 2022, the death of Gina Mahsa Amini while she was in police custody sparked protests across the country. At first, protests focused on solidarity with Amini and demands for women's rights. But they quickly became about more: corruption, poverty, and a lack of freedom. The regime has crushed any dissent. But the protests expose cracks in its power.
In order to pacify this extremely angry society, Islamic Republic needs to improve improve economic situation. But it can't because it's under sanctions because of its nuclear project. But it doesn't want to give up the nuclear project because it sees it as an insurance for its survival. This complex relationship with outside and inside has created this endemic crisis in Iran.
So what can we learn from all this? Iran is not as powerful as it would like to be. But as a whole, its strategies are effective. Iran knows how to disrupt and destabilize for its own gains and away from its own borders. How long can the regime maintain its grip on both, in the region and domestically? As long as the country is led by religious hardliners, things are unlikely to change.